If you love nature, conservation, stunning wilderness, spectacular landscapes, and of course, fabulous wine, then this is the episode for you. Today, we are talking all about the most southern wine tasting and wine cellar door in the world. He is owned by Greg Hay, and these are his words. Why on earth would you name a wine brand after one of the most remotest, wettest, farthest from an actual vineyard place in New Zealand? Well, that place he's talking about is called Wet Jacket Arm, and the wine brand is Wet Jacket Wine. We share the fascinating history of the name, why Greg loves it so much, and how he has come to build one of the most popular brands from Central Otago in New Zealand. Of course, Lyle geeks out on why the wine tastes so good, and we share all about Wet Jacket's very unique way of sharing those wines with people who can't get to visit the tasting rooms. Oh, and I almost forgot to tell you, we also divulge where you can taste the wine if you are in this part of New Zealand, and a special way you can get there. And I have to say, it is another venue with a spectacular view that only this area of New Zealand can deliver. Stay listening to the end to hear where Greg recommended a brand new restaurant to us and where this restaurant is and what we had to eat. And, there's nothing like a local to give you the best info. And, of course, the wine and views that we enjoyed on the waterfront in Queenstown. To sum up this episode, we talk about pristine nature, delicious wine, charismatic locals, and dramatic, awe-inspiring views. So please enjoy episode 78. Hey, hospitality enthusiasts, are you part of the vibrant worlds of travel, wineries, restaurants, tourism, or distilleries? Imagine showcasing your unique business on our podcast. This podcast you're listening to now. Picture an episode dedicated to your story, business, and the magic of your region. We're all about sharing extraordinary tales with our listeners, whether you're crafting exceptional spirits, curating culinary delights, guiding travellers, running a tourism venture, or creating fine wines, or anything in between. We want to hear from you. Let's explore what makes your spot and story stand out. If you're excited to share the magic of your business, get in touch. Click the link in the podcast description, or you can email me, Leanne, Leanne, at beachtravelwine.com. Let's spotlight what makes your business exceptional, so we can't wait to hear your incredible story. Morning, Lyle. How are you going?
Morning, Miss World. How are you?
I'm really well. So, Lyle, today's episode's a little bit different, isn't it, from some of our previous episodes? We're not just talking about travelling to a region. What we're doing in this one is actually we've been and interviewed somebody, which was a first for us. And you want to say why we interviewed this guy?
Yeah. Look, before we left Australia, we had arranged through family friends, Trapper and Anna Davis, to interview their close friend Greg Hay, the owner of Wet Jacket Wines.
And these people are located in Queenstown in New Zealand.
Yes? Yeah. We just really, when we talked about going to New Zealand, we wanted to sort of...
we love the wine. We love Central Otago wine. We've been there before.
We're probably... I think this was our fourth visit to Queenstown, and each time the wine is just outstanding.
And now we're doing the travel podcast. We thought, wouldn't it be great to talk to somebody who really encapsulate this region in their wine, and this guy couldn't be any more perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say he was perfect, but it was funny. But before we actually...
Did we mention his name yet?
Greg Hay.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we actually went to interview Greg, we went to a bottle shop and we found a
bottle of his wine.
Yeah, a Wet Jacket Pinot Gris. And actually, when we told Greg, he didn't even know they actually stocked it. So I think what it is that I think his explanation was that it was probably the owner of a restaurant that does have his wine may have a correlation with that particular bottle shop. But the actual...
Well, let's talk about a little bit about Greg first and who he is. You want to do that?
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll talk about the wine, because it's a fascinating story of the name itself. It's a fascinating story, let alone, but you'll get the idea of, Greg's obvious passion for this area and winemaking, because he didn't start with Wet Jacket Wines, did he?
No, he started off, actually, to be honest, he's a young local bloke, and he went to school locally, and he got his commerce degree.
Yeah, he didn't like that, did he?
No, he realised that really wasn't his go, and after actually
meeting him, you can imagine that. Yeah,
you can understand
he
why.
needs to be out being charismatic.
Yeah. So anyway, he went and got a job in commerce and realised that wasn't his go. So then he decided that he was going to, like a lot of Kiwis and also Australians in the 70s, go over to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And over in Europe, he was exposed to the wine industry there. So when he actually came back, his first winery was established with his brother Rob. I think it was 1987, and his his brother's Rob Hay, and Chard Farm was really one of the very, very first wineries in Central Otago that has become very successful and is still very successful. And the Chard Farm takes pride in being entirely estate grown, drawing grapes from diverse vineyards situated in the Gippsland, Lowburn and Parkburn sub-regions of Central Otago.
And I'm just going to throw in here, we are going to do another podcast on a whole lot of different wineries in this area, but Central Otago is the most southern wine region in the world. Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah, it's 45 degrees south.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and then after Chard Farm,
came back in the 80s, started up Chard Farm with his brother, did that for quite a while. Was a pioneer in the area, and then
until in the late 1990s, he sort of went and, I suppose, got some
diversified a bit.
Yeah, he diversified a bit. He actually founded Peregrine Wines.
Yes.
And he got together with some other shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
And now Peregrine Wines is very, very well known and quite a large winery now these days. And in 2003, he was joined by Fraser and Lindsay McLaughlin. And so
that's sort of his background. And then not all of a sudden, but I'm sure he was planning this for a while, he started out on his own.
That's right.
And he had like a winemaking friend, didn't he?
Yeah, his winemaker is Peter Bartel.
Yes.
So they joined forces and
started Wet Jacket Wines.
And started Wet Jacket Wines, basically, yeah. So
and the thing, is there anything else you want to tell me about the history of Greg and why he's so good at making wine, or can I move on to the history of this Wet Jacket Wine name just fascinates me. That's all.
Look, I think just a couple of things that Greg has decided to focus on Wet Jacket Wines, while his vision is to keep the brand small and personal with a focus on unique storytelling ethos. With a production of between 2,000 and 3,000 cases a year, Wet Jacket is a boutique winery with cellar door as the only retail outlet and online sales, while main production focuses on some Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris. Yes, we
stop it.
Yes, okay. You will also see other grape varietals such as Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Rosé, Sauv Blanc, and Chardonnay.
Okay, now I do like this is a quote from Greg which is right on the sort of a page, their website, and I'm just going to say I'm going to put a link to their website in the show notes because it is amazing. It's not just wine, as you'll find out in a little while. Now, this is what Greg said. Why, like he's questioning himself, right? Why on earth would you name a wine brand after one of the most remotest, wettest, farthest from an actual vineyard place in New Zealand? And that place is called Wet Jacket Arm, right? And can you tell us about Wet Jacket Arm? Because it's a fascinating story, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. And look, to be honest, both Leanne and I, when we first met Greg, he's so charismatic. He has a smile.
Yeah, he does.
His smile was warm, and his demeanour was confident and reassuring, and his storytelling, seriously, really interesting and rewarding. So here we go. This is the story of Wet Jacket Wine, how it got its name.
And so go and have a look at the show notes that go with this episode. I'll put a link in the podcast description, and you'll see some bottles with the Wet Jacket branding on it, and you'll see how it all fits together. It's fascinating. Go.
Yeah, look, Wet Jacket has a special place in Greg's heart, as well as its historical significance to New Zealand. New Zealand, having spent more than 20 years exploring fjordland, predominantly in Tamatea, Dusky Sound, and Te Puataha, Break Sea Sound, and Wet Jacket Arm. Greg feels utterly at home here. He spends his time hunting and gathering, using local delicacies for indulging his passion for cooking and creating wild food dishes. The actual name, Wet Jacket Arm, was attributed to Captain James Cook, who on his second trip to New Zealand in 1773 arrived on the ship the Resolution after 133 days at sea. He moored in Tamatea, or Dusky Sound, in a very tight, snug little cove, not much bigger than the vessel. The spot was called Pickersgill Harbour. He stayed here with his crew for approximately 6 weeks, during which time the longboats were sent out in all and every direction to record the depths of this amazing, vast internal waterway.
All right, just quickly, there's some pictures also of how they did that. I think it's fascinating how they measured it, the longboats and things, and that's part of the brand as well. They've got that, which is on the website. Really interesting. Sorry.
With weighted drop lines, which is what you're talking about, on one of the longboat trips, the crew came back to Pickersfield after several days recording. Having been caught out in a ferocious fjordland storm, absolutely drenched, they were asked by Cook where they had been the past few days to attain this sodden state. From there, Wet Jacket Arm was added to the list of inventive place names.
Yeah, so it all came from Captain Cook's men who got saturated in their clothes, and they called it Wet Jacket Arm.
Yeah. And look,
and Greg has a real affinity with this place, doesn't he? Doubtful Sound and Dusky Sound. Sorry, yeah.
Wet Jacket Arm is a mesmerising boat trip heading inland to the absolute head of the arm. The hills in here seem to be the tallest.
Yeah,
the sheer faces with trees clinging precariously to them seem to be the tallest, and the waterfall after rain seemed to fall the furthest. Look, it's almost like he's infatuated by the place.
He's been going there every year. And he takes his staff there, and he takes other people there. He's even got a boat called the Pembroke, which I've got some pictures of, where they go and they do conservation work. And there's, this is, the winery is one thing, but this Wet Jacket and his love for this area and the conservation, and it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think he's very he's fascinated by Captain Cook and what a fabulous Navy person he was. And actually, when the New Zealand Navy went in to actually measure the depths with sonar and everything, what Captain Cook had done was so accurate.
Wow,
and
really?
Seriously, really good. And actually, he obviously Captain Cook discovered or calculated the latitude and longitude of New Zealand. So basically, Captain Cook put New Zealand on the map.
Well, I guess we should get back to the wine a little bit, and this is where Lyle geeks out a bit. He's and this is why it's not really geeking out. You're explaining why the wine in this area is so good, and it's because of the location, really.
Yeah, all that's true, including the fact that I geek out. I accept that. And
if geeking out on wine means you get to taste it.
Well, the other side is too is I also want to show as much respect as I can to Greg, and what his business is. So, look, in Greg's words, there are lots of places you can grow grapes. There are lots of places you can make wine, but there's very few that have got this sitting at their back door. Now, I wasn't sure whether Greg was talking about the views of the
the remarkables.
The views at the back
of the
door.
water.
Whether it's the snow-capped mountains, the mirrored and spectacular Lake Wakapitu. Tipu, yeah. I wrote that down wrong. Or the terraced vineyards, crystal clear rivers that spread out all over Central Otago. Or did he mean all the amazing natural advantages that Central Otago provides?
Oh, what would those amazing natural advantages
Isn't it surprising that you asked me that? Greg prefers to source his grapes from the Cromwell Basin, which has developed into Central Otago's most significant wine-growing sub-region and a central for winemaking facilities as a result of its distinctive terroir and climate. Now, the terroir basically, in wine man's talk, is like the geography. It takes into everything,
the soil,
that it affects,
sunshine, the temperature, all the stuff. Yeah,
the grapes. So the basin contains a variety of glacial and glacial-related sediments dating from the present to 650,000 years ago. So that's unique.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then you've got the warm
not all wine regions are glacial,
exactly.
areas. Yeah.
So, and of course, what happens within those glaciers, and when it carves out the rock, there's different soils and sediments that come with that. Sure. So that's why it makes it unique. The warm, semi-arid climate, schist soil, and seasonal temperature extremes make Cromwell ideal for grape cultivation. Now, like slate, schists. I think I got it right the first time. Sorry, Greg, but anyway, is a.
Do you want to spell it for me?
It's SCHIST.
Yeah. Shit.
So if you took the S out, anyway, we won't go there. Is a metamorphic soil, meaning it formed when an intense bout of heat and pressure transformed one type of rock into another.
So there's all sorts of stuff going on in the natural growing environment. Okay. That's what you're saying. So
now, the schist soil are comprised of hard, dense rocks that are layered with minerals. These soils are generally flaky, retain heat well, and create some of the world's biggest and boldest reds. So
Pinot Noir.
Yeah, a lot of we talk about in Europe, the best wines are in these cooler climate areas, you know. So Cromwell has both terraces and valley floor that are running parallel to mountain ranges. Here, these are richer and fuller because they're from the valley floor. So that explains itself.
Yes.
Cromwell's location also supports the extremely positive diurnal effect in relation to growing grapes.
Now, diurnal is like the difference between the warmest temperature of the day and the coldest temperature at night.
Basically. It's the difference between average daytime high temperatures and the average nighttime low temperatures. Large diurnal shifts allow grapes to maintain high acidity, and of course, because it's at south 45 degrees, that's again unique because it's the furthest place south in the world that we grow grapes. This boosts wine quality by postponing the drop in grape acidity and retains the desirable aromatics associated with early stage ripeness. Now, the ripeness is got to do with the sugar retention and all that sort of thing. So wine regions that are sunny and warm by day but cool off dramatically at night typically make the highest quality wines. So it's it looks like it's got everything going for it. So and then you've got other elements unique to Central Otago include the mountain range protection from the wild westerly roaring 40s winds on the west coast of New Zealand. And that also has a rain shadow impact, which also limits the humidity, which decreases the pressure of grape diseases. However, you can't have it going all your own way.
No.
There are problems with frost.
Yeah.
Now, if the air temperature of a fog is below 0 degrees centigrade, then the tiny water droplets remain in liquid form. However, if they come in contact with objects such as trees, leaves, and grapes, they freeze, covering the surface with rime known as hoar frosts.
Yeah, so I grew up in a cold climate where there were frosts, and if it was a still night, you knew it was going to be frosty in the morning because the fog or the droplets you're saying lands and they freeze. They touch when they touch grass and the trees and that sort of thing. If there was a breeze at all, kept the air stirring, it didn't frost.
Well, I'll tell you how they actually, it's a pretty unique way. And actually, when Lan and I found out about this, we were blown away, weren't we? One way to mitigate this problem is using helicopters, taking advantage of the rotor downward to help drawn down the warmer air from the inversion layers onto the grapes. It keeps the grape warmer, enhancing frost protection. Now, obviously, then
they have big fans also as well. I've seen those as well as the helicopter. So basically, you've got to keep the air circulating so it doesn't settle.
Yeah. So
because sometimes in these colder climates, you can have a late frost. So frosts sort of in the winter don't necessarily matter because they haven't performed the grapes. But we're talking, in spring and summer when the grapes are growing, and if you have a severe frost, it can wipe out, much of the
crop.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
So look, so there's all these geographic and environmental pluses, like advantages this area's got, but then of course it comes down to the winemaker.
Well, yes, but also you're saying all of that, but when it comes down to it, for a novice like me, I appreciate.
I wouldn't say you're a novice wine drinker, Leonita.
Well, I was just saying, for someone like me, all that's interesting and fascinating, but I just know now that this Central Otago has some of my favourite wines, in the world, really.
Absolutely, and closely maybe followed by Tasmania, which again is a cold climate.
It is.
Yeah, and look, it was quite funny when we were talking to Greg about Tasmanian wine, and he loves Tasmanian wine, but he made it very, very clear that where he is at 45 degrees, whereas Tassie is at 42 or 43 degrees. So that couple of degrees in Greg's calculation makes all the difference. But although Greg, he was really, really extremely generous with his praise for his viticulturist or stroke winemaker and mate, Peter Bartel, he did give the impression his own knowledge, experience, and I think the word that really stuck to me was his instincts regarding winemaking. Obviously, very, very important in wet jacket wine.
I'd actually say even he's a bit of a risk taker.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what, mate? It's funny you say that because when I was doing all the information on this, I really got a correlation between Captain Cook's, exploring and that sort of thing, and his hunter-gathering sort of thing. That he likes the old style, but he's really an explorer as well.
Sure.
And in Central Otago wine. So I'm glad you brought that up because I was wondering how I was going to, include that. But I really got the impression with that. So,
but he, one of the things that's very important to Greg is, obviously, the area, the winemaking, all that stuff. But that he has a huge concern about conservation in these sounds.
In fact, Greg, Greg's is a very passionate conservationist, as well as the trustee for the Fiordland Conservation Trust.
Yes.
Now
so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, look, he's partnered up with Real New Zealand, which is a tourist company down there in Milford Sound. Well, it's basically all
in
over
the Fiordland.
All around Queenstown.
Yeah.
Now they've
got some wine that they sell on their tours.
Yeah, basically they've introduced wet jacket Putangi Pinot Noir to its Fiordland wine list. So obviously the boats that do the cruises on the
food and wine,
that particular wine. Now for every bottle of Putangi sold, $10 goes towards a conservation project in either Patea, which is the Maori name for doubtful, or Pio Pio Tahi, which is the Milford Sound. Now, as well as contributing through bottled sales, Wet Jacket are donating 50% of their cellar door tasting fees to the projects. Now, there's a couple of projects. The projects include the monitoring of trap lines on Bowser Island to maintain refuge for invertebrates and native tree species. And they've also, money goes directly to trapping projects at Harrison Cove, known to be a habitat for Fiordland crested penguins, especially when they are most vulnerable during breeding and molting. The man that inspired Greg's amazing commitment to conservation was named Richard. Don't you laugh, Leanne.
Because Lyle keeps telling me Greg's dedication to conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, he does definitely have good conversation.
Oh, he loves a good story.
So, I think his conversation about conservation is perfect.
Yeah, so Greg's commitment to conservation
there we go.
was named Richard Henry, who made it his singular mission to save as many birds as he could back in the 1800s.
Yeah, so once again, we've got Greg and the history of this area,
sure.
coming together again. So not just with, the name and Dr. Hook, Dr. Hook. Oh, he knows who
Sorry,
Dr.
Greg.
Hook is.
I'm trying to keep it professional,
I'm sure he knows who Dr. Hook is. But Captain Cook, right? And now he's got this other connection back in history, yeah?
Yeah. So
an early conservationist.
Yeah, obviously Richard Henry inspired Greg in relation to the conservation.
There we go.
Although Richard Henry eventually realised the rats and the ferrets could swim to his remote island, his determination inspired Greg to name their locally made wine Patangi Wines after the boat that Richard bravely traversed the rough southern straits.
Oh my gosh.
Lovingly named after his favourite bird.
Right, okay.
So,
all right, perfect. So I think what we need to do, though, is tell our listeners something. Have we you finished about Greg's conservation and conversation now? And yes?
Yes, I am.
All right, well, do you want to tell people a little bit about the wines and what they taste like?
Yeah, I'd love to.
That'd be perfect.
In fact, I'd rather than talking about it, I'd rather be drinking, to be honest, Greg. But look, the wine. Seriously, that first bottle we had before we met Greg, it was like when we first tasted it, was like.
Imagine if we had it and it was terrible, and we just like, oh yeah, we love your wine, but like once we had it, we were even keen at it to go and meet with Greg, and now we're even keen.
It was quite funny because Greg actually did offer us a wine.
He had all the wines out.
Yeah, well, he had all the wines out,
and we're like, let's keep it professional. We're doing an interview here.
So we were trying to keep it professional, but so the willpower lasted till about halfway through the interview, and then we started. Yeah. And seriously, look, I'm going to read out some of the tasting notes now.
Just to say the four sort of big ones. I think.
Well, basically, the first one will be what the nose is. In other words, how
it
smells. The second one will be how it tastes, what it tastes like, the fruits, and the last one is how it feels in your mouth. Okay. So. Now, we tasted the 2020 Pinot Noir, and it's $45 at this point. It's $45 to purchase from the.
Well, we're talking New Zealand dollars, so that's a bit a bit of a conversion for everybody as well. So,
sure.
But anyway, there will be links to the website in the show notes. So.
Yeah. Now, just remembering that Central Otago Pinot Noir is probably recognised as the best Pinot Noir in the world.
To put this in perspective, Central Otago probably produces about 1% of wines in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole Central Otago, but this Pinot Noir is world famous.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So, think about that. This tiny little, production is known all over the world. And you're going to have some proof of that in a minute, actually. But anyway, let's give it some taste. Pinot Noir, let's go.
Okay, so the Pinot Noir, it's fragrant blackberry, dark chocolate, smoky char, and dried herbs.
Yum.
So that's the smell. The lush entry with sweet, ripe cherry, plum, and dark chocolate.
There's nothing there I don't like.
With hints of caramel, spice, and tobacco.
Okay.
Complex and concentrated with silky palate and long finish.
It's just divine.
Yeah. Now, the Patangi Pinot Noir, which is a 2021, is $35 New Zealand. Now, that's fragrant with red berries, plum, mushroom, violets, and Christmas cake spice.
Right.
Juicy entry with sweet red cherry, blueberry, blackberry, and sweet licorice,
Star
which is
anise,
the star of
yeah.
anise. Yeah. Concentrated with super silky textured with long spiced red fruit finish.
Okay, so that's a bit lighter than the other one. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. But Jesus, it is spectacular.
Sure.
Now the 2022 Wet Jacket Pinot Gris. Now,
hello.
Yeah, we're
We're a little bit biased.
Yeah, we love the old Pinot Gris. Fragrant with ripe pear, white nectarine, peach, apple blossom, and citrus. Now, the juicy entry with ripe apple, pear, melon, and lemon. Now, it's complex with well balanced, with good concentration and a long, minerable, and ripe citrus finish.
Divine.
We loved it.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
2022 Wet Jacket Sauv Blanc.
This wasn't bad either, just quietly.
Oh, yeah, just quietly.
Shame it's not
okay, so
where would it be 1 o'clock? We should be doing a tasting while we're doing this.
Yeah, and this is it. We're having a day off today.
We
aren't
are.
we?
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm not sure that's going to last. Fragrant with passion fruit, citrus, and white melon, with hints of gooseberry and jasmine. Tropical flavors of ripe gooseberry, passion fruit, and lychee.
My favourite.
Leanne's favourite. Concentrated with bright acidity and long mineral finish.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely divine.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, Greg sort of did say during the interview that he feels that his focus is more on mineral rather than aromatic. But he also said that he believes that Pinot Gris is going to become more and more prevalent
in Central Otago.
In Central Otago.
Good to know. Yes.
So there's just one other.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is we did try it. It was a 2021 Wet Jacket Gewürztraminer. That's $32 New Zealand. Now, Gewürztraminer to me has always been a bit sweeter, but it's fragrant with pretty rose petal, guava, Turkish delight, lime zest, and river stone. It's sweet apple and baked pear on entry. Complex mouth-filling and softly textured with nice concentration and long finish with a sweet flourish. Now, I listened to a...
There's a podcast called Wine for Normal People.
Yeah. And the lady's name that has that or owns that or produces that is Elizabeth Snyder. Now, she had a guest on one of her shows, which was, I think it was, Wine for Normal People, episode 212. And her guest was Simone Madden Gray. Now, she does podcasts and she's a Kiwi. She's from Dunedin, so she's a local girl, but she lives in Australia now. And she was extremely complimentary of the Wet Jacket Gewürztraminer. Yeah, extremely.
So that's a very famous wine podcast. Out of the States, and so this is pretty incredible to be recognised for that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I listened to it randomly, I suppose, and there's one on
Central Otago.
Well, there's basically one on New Zealand wines, and
so Wine for Normal People. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Is that sure. a good idea, don't you think?
Yep.
So we're sort of geeking out a bit here on wine tasting and all that, but I guess it is a podcast about wine.
Yeah.
But Greg has a pretty unique philosophy about winemaking, doesn't he?
Yeah, and this is I actually got Leanne.
Asked him,
Leanne
he told us this.
So. To ask him this question, and his response was, "I have tried along the way to find horses for courses when it comes to sites for different varieties that we have. We have certain vineyards that produce single varieties such as Sauvignon Blanc from Bannockburn in the past, but low burn shortly. And the same with Riesling. The Gewürztraminer grape are grown in Alexandra." So, and when we spoke to him, he was very adamant that that's the way he likes to do it.
He likes to find the best grapes in the areas to make the wines.
Yeah. He also said, however, to help with texture and complexity, and possibly allow more consistency during different seasonal swings, we enjoy blending Pinot Noirs and Gris with different sites throughout the region.
Okay.
So it's almost like he's got this love of cooking and recipes, and it's almost like I can see a correlation between that and the way
he picks the best ingredients,
yeah,
that i.e. grapes,
yeah,
from different places,
yeah.
puts them together.
So he's not limited by having his own vineyards.
Just his own vineyards, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, look, it's and then
where can we taste this here wine?
well, we can taste this here wine. Greg's
so we're, as you probably we're in Central Otago and we're in Queenstown. And Greg, we were lucky enough to find out when we spoke to Greg, we had a bit of an inside scoop how he was setting up a new tasting room, and right on the Lake Wakatipu.
That's the one.
And at the marina at Frankton.
Yep.
And that's where the tasting rooms are now. So you can sit there, and how does he describe looking out?
Greg says it feels perfect to be sitting doing tastings, looking across the lake directly at the Remarkables. It is the most southerly wine tasting room in New Zealand and therefore the world, and the closest to Wet Jacket Arm in Fiordland.
Yeah, so pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's just that just suits Greg as we've come to know him.
And here's a little hint: you can actually hop on the water taxi in Queenstown. It'll drop you right there at the marina.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And you can do your wine tasting, and you can hop back and buy your wine, and you can hop back on that little water taxi. If you don't have a car or you don't want to take a normal taxi, it's much shorter, much cheaper, and you get the views all the way around as well. So I think it's perfect.
It is perfect. Yeah. Good one, Greg.
Yeah, it's great. So that's where you can taste it if you're there, right? What about if you can't get to Queenstown and you want to buy the wine?
So you can go on their website, which is...
And I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, that you go to the description on the player you're listening on now and click on the link to the episode, and all the information about Wet Jacket wine will be there, including how you can buy it. Yes, online. Yep.
Yeah, and so it's the website, all the W's, wetjacket.nz.
Yes.
You order online. You can order in Australia. It's either a 9 or a 15 bottle case.
They also have people that have a subscription. Theirs is called, you can become a providor.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that means you get 2 deliveries a year.
Yeah, two cases. And
now this is in New Zealand. I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but you could find that out by emailing.
No, you can. Okay. So the Wet Jacket Providors commit to purchase 2 cases per year. They come in May and November, obviously depending on the harvesting, I suppose that comes down to it. Now there's 12 bottle cases in New Zealand.
Yes.
And 15 for Australia.
Okay.
So I don't know why they've got 15 bottles.
And you can a weight thing.
Yeah, and free freight in New Zealand and Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Now the freight, I looked it up, and it was about $100 for a carton of 15. Like it was the same for about a carton of 12 and 15.
But what else, being a providor, does that get you though?
Okay, or rather than just wait for them to send what they think's good, you can actually customise your own selection.
Okay.
The subscription fee unlocks the following rewards: access to older vintages, first look at new releases, invitation to providor events. Obviously, that's going to be much easier if you live on the South Island. And priority.
We get invited.
Yeah,
there we go.
Greg, if you invite us, we'll be there, mate. Priority bookings for tasting. Additional wine purchases will unlock further rewards, including catered dinners and vineyard tours, and even at the penultimate level, your own personal journey into Wet Jacket Arm.
That would be absolutely spectacular.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna. It's not going to be a surprise.
We're not begging.
No. It's not going to be a surprise, but I am going to do an order for your Christmas present for this year.
Perfect.
Thank
you. Well, and they before we finish up too, they also have got this new sort of idea that they've been doing for a while now. And it's only in New Zealand, but we are talking to Greg about trying to maybe do something in Australia, and it's like virtual tastings.
Yeah,
and
it's a great idea.
Yeah, so they have got 6 little 200ml bottles of wine that they send out.
Yeah,
and you buy those, and then they do the online tasting, with one of their
one of the crew.
Yeah, and what a fabulous idea.
Yeah, it's $50 New Zealand. Yeah, and as Lan said, those 6 bottles that they sent out.
There's
basically
enough for 4 tastings, so for 4.
Well,
people.
I thought it was 6, but anyway, that's
4 to 6.
Smokes and mirrors, I
well,
suppose.
If it's us, it's 2 people.
I'd say that's pretty fair. I'd say that's really accurate. Now, probably the other thing that Greg really was probably not so important, but it was important to us. We asked him where was a good place to go out for dinner.
Well, we did, but you might have forgotten. We actually asked him a few places, and we're going to talk about this in another podcast about Arrowtown.
Yep.
But he gave us some really good recommendations there, and some really great ones, obviously in Queenstown, including we actually went straight back and went there for dinner
that night.
And it was like a pretty brand new restaurant. So
it was only open a couple of months.
Yeah, so we were keen to go and check that out, and we went early, so we got a really great table, and it's called Soda, right on the waterfront.
Yeah.
Upstairs with $1 million views.
Yeah.
And I've got some amazing photos of that restaurant and the views as well, and including the views of from Wet Jacket Wine's tasting room and the remarkables that they look at as well. So in the podcast description you're listening on, or listening on, go to the description, and the link to episode 78 will be there. But Soda, sorry.
Soda was it's right on the edge of Lake
Wakatipu.
Actually,
yeah, no, don't. Let's go. Don't even go there.
Lyle. Trapper told us how to actually say
please.
Lake Wakatipu the correct way.
Yeah, but you're not going to say it now. It's a family show. Please. Get on with it. I'm pointing at the book and frowning at it because it's about to
Look, the decor was basically like there was a central bar.
Yeah.
And the decor was magnificent.
Sort of sage green and soft pinks.
Yeah, it was just beautiful. Pastel pink, I would have said. But
outside they've got big outdoor area as well.
Yeah,
beautiful area.
Now, okay. The meal I had for an entree duck liver pate and cured apple. And I had our waitress, her name
was a lovely girl from France.
Ines, she was from Lyon, France.
Yeah.
And she said, are you going to have bread? And I thought, well, don't the bread come with it? But with the pate, because it normally does. But no. So I ordered fire roasted bread and Terra Sancta olive oil balsamic. Seriously, you had some. It was beautiful, this bread, and it was done in like a pizza oven. And I'm so glad she
recommended it.
Yeah, she recommended it. Lan had, as always, the jamón ibérico de cebo. That's
the Iberian ham.
Yeah, basically the Spanish ham. Yeah. And Lan said she loved it. For a main course, we shared a plate, and it was the Walter Peak lamb oyster shoulder, Romesco mint salsa, PX juice. Now, I don't know what the PX juice. Jus. Well, yeah, jus. Okay. Look,
French, mate.
Yeah, look, it was $95.
Yeah,
but that's really, when you think about it, that you're paying about $40.
New Zealand dollars, so it's a little bit.
Yeah, so it's not cheap, but seriously,
the food was beautiful,
worth and every cent.
And also, the wine list had Wet Jacket wine.
Yeah.
So
we had another Pinot Gris.
We did.
We probably should have had a red, but it was just.
Yeah, so that's the advantage of talking to locals. They know all the information of where to go as well. So thanks, Greg, for that recommendation.
Yeah, and I just fell in love with Ines's French accent.
Yes,
I remember her.
Yeah.
She was lovely. So yeah, Greg, hats off. It was perfect. It was actually the perfect cap to a great day.
Yeah. So this is to finish off, and as we said earlier in the podcast, if you would like your business, wine region, tourism place, travel aid, whatever, to be a feature on our podcast, hit me up at Leanne, Leanne, at beachtravelwine.com, or just send us a message on Instagram. But, Lyle, there wasn't that many places that we actually had a wine, but, you know.
We did was drink wine,
I know,
the tastings.
Yeah.
Oh, where was the best? Look, I got to say, soda, I was blown away. I reckon it's probably one of the best restaurants I've ever been to.
Yeah, it was nice. Well, I just, like having...
And the fact that it was wet jacket Pinot Gris.
Yeah. Well, I was just, like actually speaking to Greg, who, he's so passionate about winemaking, but also the conservation that he does, and just being able to chat with him like he was an old mate was such a privilege. And then to sit there and try the wines that, basically he's developed, with his winemaking friends and all his experience, just enjoying having a wine with him was my favorite.
Yeah, look, yeah, you're probably right. It was like he was so charismatic and such a nice and welcoming man.
So check out Wet Jacket Wines. I will put a link in the show notes to their website, because they've got all the conservation stuff, as well as, the wines that you can buy, and even the labels and the history of the whole story. And, it's a fascinating wine region, and the story that goes with it's amazing. So yeah.
Well, actually, the story that goes with it actually, I think, makes the actual podcast so much more interesting than just doing a podcast on a winery.
Oh, yes.
I thought
However,
it was great.
We've got another podcast coming up, about a wine tour we did, and there's lots of different wineries in that as well, in the same region. But there's a whole different. There's from churches to tin sheds to, some amazing little places that we went. So until then, it's goodbye from me.
Arrivederci.
Really?
I don't know.